Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/AskReddit. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Who's the stranger you've once met that you can't forget? I had just gotten my license and was bringing my friend home. We live in the middle of nowhere, and he was about a 35-minute drive away. On the way to his house, I saw a woman walking on the side of the road, desperately looking for a ride in the cold rain. It was late at night, and my friend told me picking someone up was a bad idea, so I didn't. On the way back from his house, I saw her again. She had walked a couple miles already at the point. I decided fuck it, turned around and asked her if she needed a ride. I took her 15 miles, yes, she was going to walk 15 miles in early March in the rain, to her town. She was such a cool person. She had some amazing tattoos, and I found out she used to follow Green Day around on tour in the mid-90s. Just awesome. And a really sweet person. She was at the hospital getting some kind of treatment for lupus, and her alcoholic husband abandoned her there with no ride and no phone, so she just decided to start walking. She insisted I drop her off a few blocks from her house, so I did. She didn't have any money, and I told her certainly didn't want any. But she found a crumpled up dollar bill in her pocket and gave it to me anyway. I'm not sure why, but I never spent that dollar. I felt like it wasn't mine and that maybe I'd see her again and give it back to her. I keep in my glove box still, 8 years later. When I was 17, my dog got out and was hit by a car. A man, not the driver, found him in the street and called my house. I was home alone and ran outside where he died in my arms. The guy who found him was driving an HVAC truck and clearly had no experience with consoling teenage girls, but he stayed with me and for an hour on the side of the road while I called my parents, cried hysterically with snot and tears streaming down my face, yelled at rubberneckers, and was basically inconsolable. He would give me awkward pats on the back to help calm me down until my mom came. Months later, I was working at the grocery store and he came through my line. I recognized him right away, but wasn't sure if he recognized me. Before he left, he made eye contact and gave me a knowing nod and half smile of acknowledgement. He's my favorite stranger. LOL, ah, that cute. I just now wept. The most memorable was an elderly lady I saw sitting by herself crying in the main concourse of a New York airport. I sat down next to her and asked if I could help in any way. She said that she had never been in an airport and that it was overwhelming. She wanted to attend a family funeral on the West Coast, but was confused about where to go in the crowded airport, a situation made worse due to the fact that she was hard of hearing and the loud announcements just compounded the confusion. The lady was a sweetheart. So, as I once described, I offered to take her through security and directly to her flight. When we arrived at the gate, I explained to the flight attendant that she was hard of hearing, had never been to an airport before, and needed special care. The attendant gladly took the woman under her wing and assured me she'd be properly cared for, including assistance upon arrival. At which point, this lovely lady turned to wave just before boarding and blew me a kiss. I'll never forget her or this special moment. I was flying overseas for a 2-year deployment. I was stuck at the Atlanta airport for several hours as a pretty nasty winter storm was raging outside. I was not in uniform, but I did have my military haircut and demeanor going. I decided I would head over to a little airport bar for a smoke and a drink. The place was empty. I sit down at the bar and mindlessly stare at the TV. I sat there for a good 20 minutes alone when this very old man approached and sat down right next to me. My first thought was along the lines of, why is this weird dude in my space when this entire place was empty? He orders a drink and then bluntly asks me what unit I am with, clearly smelling the soldier on me somehow. I, of course, don't answer him, but I just casually tell him I am in the service, and I am waiting for a delayed flight. Curious, I ask him how he knew I was in the service. He said, son, I served in the army for almost 36 years. I can spot you guys a mile away. We start talking army. He was drafted in 1942 and sent to Europe in 1943. He was part of the invasion of Normandy, landing on Utah Beach in the first wave led by Theodore Roosevelt, Jr., who was killed in action that day. He decided the army life was for him and stayed the duration of World War II in Europe. After the war, he became a drill sergeant and trained new recruits. He was deployed to the Korean Peninsula and participated in several key battles in the Korean War. He then did 5 tours in Vietnam from 1964 all the way through to 1972. On his last tour, he was shot 4 times by enemy fire and lost his eyesight in one eye and the use of his left arm. He retired in 1977 as a command sergeant major. It was easily one of the most fascinating and engrossing conversations I have ever been a part of. This guy is a fucking legend in my book. 3 fucking wars under his belt and right in the middle of some of the heaviest fighting the country has been involved with. We sat there, just the 2 of us, in that bar for several hours talking and laughing and enjoying life stories. Finally, it was time for me to head out and catch my flight. I could have talked to him forever. He insisted on paying for my food and drinks. As I stood up to walk away, he slowly stood up and gave me what I would call the sweetest, manliest hug I have ever experienced. We just stood in this bar hugging each other for a while. He told me that he was proud of me and all our young troops, and he told me to keep my head down and to come home safely. He reached in his pocket and pulled out one of his old challenge coins from his last days of active duty and handed it to me. He said it would bring me luck as nobody will fuck with you while you have that coin in your pocket, or I'll haunt their ass when I'm dead. He shuffled off into the crowd and disappeared. I have carried that coin in my pocket every single day since I met him. Thanks, Jack. I was walking to the bus stop in middle school, and a woman walked by with her dog. The dog jumped at me and the woman pulled him back and said, "Yes, she's pretty, isn't she?" It was a small thing, but after being relentlessly bullied at school for being ugly/looking like a boy, it meant the world to me. 9 years later and I still remember, smiley face. Funny how you remember small things like this your whole life. That was such a nice story. I have the friendliest pup who wants to play with everyone on walks. I always say we can't play with our new friend right now. Maybe you can say hi another time to people who acknowledge him. I actually never even met my stranger. I'm told I've been drawing since I could hold a pencil. Since before I can remember. When I was 6 my father had been out on a job and met a woman who was an artist. He must have spoken about my love of creating art. When he came home he told me about meeting this artist. When she asked him what brand of pencils I had, he said the little ones that come with coloring books. She wouldn't hear of it and assured Dad I needed better quality pencils. She sent him home with a brand new set of expensive professional quality colored pencils. That's the day I remember the love of drawing being palpable. I still use that brand today and can't remember a time when I didn't have possession of a set. I think of her often, whoever she is. I feel like she saw me that day. I doubt I would have been so determined to improve on my skills if it weren't for her. Words aren't my first language, so her kindness allowed me an avenue of communication where there perhaps wouldn't have been one. Her kindness almost 50 years later still makes me feel special. I was a teenager and recently diagnosed with diabetes. I was flying to Florida to visit my grandparents, a trip I had been looking forward to. I was sitting next to a probably 30-year-old woman on the plane. Professional looking, well put together. I had to check my blood glucose and warned her. She said, "No worries, I should check mine also." She showed me her insulin pump. I was in the process of considering switching to a pump. We compared diagnosis stories. I knew a few people my age with diabetes, but it was so uplifting to see a woman a few years older than me that seemed to have her life put together. It gave me some solid hope for the future I clung for a while. Such a nice story. Hope you are doing well now. I was inside the funeral home at my dad's funeral, and I was sitting in the corner by myself crying. I looked up and there was a man I've never seen before standing there. He kinda looked homeless with a huge bulky dirty jacket and dirty pants. He gave me a hug and said energy never dies, it just changes form, and he left. I will never forget him. My mom said she thinks it was my dad's old childhood friend who was indeed homeless. I have never seen him again. It will be 6 years ago on January 4th. We miss you, Dad. Gave an hamburger to a homeless man who chatted a bit with me about philosophy. Hours later I found him shitting on a parking lot. We made eye contact accidentally. I'm sure he won't forget me either. Got me in the first half, not gonna lie. When I was in my early 20s, I was walking out of the corner shop to head home, and a very attractive guy walked up to me with a bunch of flowers, smiled and said, "These are for you, have a great day," and walked off. They were tulips, which are my favorite flower. It totally made my day. I imagine it was his random act of kindness for the day, and it prompted me to buy some flowers for my nan next time I saw her. That's a glorious thing to happen. Random Latvian guy wanted to play football, soccer, with me. I want to be more open with strangers, so we played. The talk afterwards was special. He talked about his job. He is a repairman who sailed around the world repairing motors and shit, and he talked about him being on the run from the Latvian police on drug charges, how bad Latvia really is, and how he just wanted a friend here since he only knew his sister and her husband. This was a mind-boggling conversation, as I don't know if he speaks the truth or not. However, I want to believe he's not lying. We wrapped up our stuff, said goodbyes, and went on our bikes heading home. He apparently took a wrong turn and caught up with where I was riding. With his thick Slavic accent, I hear my friend. I had the biggest fucking smile on my face. Can't remember last time someone called me their friend. Wonder where the bastard is now. When I was a freshman in high school, I had a very upset stomach, a good old-fashioned flu. It was the end of the day and I was feeling dizzy, so I sat down on the floor and leaned back, waiting for the path to my locker to clear. All of a sudden I just twisted to my side and started vomiting like crazy. I couldn't help it. It was very embarrassing. But then, 2 seniors who were part of the popular bitches crowd came running up to me. One immediately went on her knees and started rubbing my back, holding my hair, and telling me that everything will be alright. The other one ran to the nurse to give me help. It was a small thing, but that is when I learned not to judge a book by its cover. Just because someone who has the stereotype of being nasty doesn't mean that they won't help a fellow person out in a time of need. In fact, a couple days later, I saw them by my locker. They popped in at least once a day for the few days I was out, hoping to catch me to ask me how I was feeling. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.